Our suspect was definitely part of the receiving public. Putting out too much information about what we knew and didn't know was a mistake that couldn't be undone. So what should we do? Our compromise was a quick, unscheduled press briefing out on the steps of the Daily Building. It was something none of us wanted to do, but there didn't seem to be an alternative that the chief was willing to agree to. He needed to communicate progress on the case, no matter what the possible consequences for the investigation. At 8 that night, Sampson and I spoke with reporters all right, but only long enough to name Tyler Bell as our primary suspect, and to say that we weren't taking any questions at this time. Bree stayed off camera. It was her decision all the way. She didn't want to make her recent attack any more of the story than it already was. Afterward, the three of us went straight into an emergency session upstairs. It was hard to imagine that this case was heating up, but it was. DCAK seemed to want it that way. Someone certainly did. Chapter 101. What a mess this was, and maybe getting worse. The extended team was waiting for us upstairs, along with just about every major case squad detective and at least one representative from every district station house in the entire city. Someone passed an envelope for Officer Pearsall's family while I was up in the front, getting ready to talk and answer any questions I could. I waited an extra couple of minutes for the sad, depressing collection to end. Then I began. I'll make this as quick as I can. I know you want to get back out there on the street. So do I. I held up Bell's photo. This is Tyler Bell. We'll pass around copies of the picture. There's a real good chance that he's DCAK. By the 11 o'clock news, this will be the most famous picture in Washington, probably in the entire country. The problem is, there's no way Bell's going to be seen looking like this. For what it's worth, we're working up simulations without all the hair. His height is the only given, 6'2" or 6'3". That's something he won't be able to change very much. One of the 2nd District guys raised a hand. Dr. Cross, if this is about revenge for Bell's brother, why do you think he hasn't come directly after you? I nodded. It was a good question to get out of the way. First of all, I'd say that he has come after me, but not in the way you mean. The closer he can put himself to those of us who are looking for him, the bigger his emotional payoff. I'm guessing it's an extension of the kick he gets from killing in front of an audience. But it's only an educated guess at this point. We just don't know for sure. Second, I'm not convinced yet that this is about revenge. We'll have to see. If anything, I'd say he might be trying to succeed against me where his brother failed, and he's using the brother to misdirect us. Maybe even to delude himself that this is serving something more than his own ego. But it's really all been about him from the beginning. Not revenge. Not his brother. His huge ego. Lisa Johnson, one of our D2s, looked up from her notes. How would Bell even know you'd be assigned to the case? You weren't back on the force when he started. That's right, isn't it? Bree took that one. Lisa, even if Alex wasn't involved at the beginning, the Michael Bell connection would have gotten him involved eventually. And remember, we were led right to this connection. So you think he used the cell phone on purpose? Johnson asked. Am I tracking this right? Absolutely. I don't think he does anything without a reason, I said. If we dropped the ball at some point, missed a clue, he would have lobbed another one our way. The more of this he can engineer, the more his needs will be met in the end. Meaning the need to kill and get away with it? Somebody asked from way in the back. I was going to say the need to beat our brains in at any cost. Show us up. That's what he's done so far. Chapter 102. Late that night, as if to underscore everything that had happened so far, I got a direct reply from DCAK that seemed to say, ready or not, here I come. Right in your face. I was home doing online research. On account of the Michael and Tyler Bell connection, I was particularly curious about sibling relationships in serial murder cases. I'd found out about Danny and Larry Raines, who had gone on separate sprees in the 60s and 70s. And there was a case in Rochester, the identical twin Spahalski brothers. One twin had confessed to 2 murders and was suspected in at least 2 others, while his brother was serving time for a single, much earlier homicide. Other than blood relation, neither instance showed any additional level of connection, no hookup to my role with the Bell brothers. And most of what I found involved 2 or more family members partnering for concurrent work. There was also the ongoing mystery about the woman in Baltimore. Who the hell was she? And what had happened to her after the car chase? Did DCAK have an accomplice? And possibly a mentor in Kyle Craig? I logged onto my department email to send around some of what I'd learned. When it opened, I found a new message waiting for me. Not a nice one, either.
What do I want, Detective Cross? That's it? Frankly, I'm surprised you have to ask. But let me spell it out for you as clearly as I can. I want you to pay for what you did to my brother. That's reasonable, don't you think? I want you to think about how you never really tried to understand him before you killed him. Just like you don't understand me, and never will. I want to show you that you're not nearly as good at this game as you think you are. None of you forensic shrinks ever are. Or the profilers, who are such incredible frauds, as even you probably know. And I want you to understand one more thing. This is never going to be on any terms but mine. That's how it will end. The way I want it to. When I decide. Any more questions? TB. Or not TB.
The first thing I did was forward the message to Anjali Patel with a request for a fast turnaround, which she said wouldn't be a problem despite the hour. She was working on nothing but DCAK. Then I called Bree and read her the note twice. "So, do you buy it?" she asked after I finished. "The payback thing?" "No, not really. You?" "Why should we? Everything else he's done is a lie. And what about the way he signed it?" That kept coming up, the way we didn't really know which parts of DCAK were Tyler Bell and which parts were some kind of theater. Who was Tyler Bell? Specifically, who had he been before all this started, or at least before we got into the loop? "I'd sure like to see that cabin of his," I said, my mind latching onto the idea as I said the words out loud. Snoop around. "I was thinking the same thing, but there's no way, is there? We've got this case slamming right now. But I agree with you. I'd like to look around that cabin." "We could leave Friday," I said. "Be back by Sunday." Bree didn't answer. I think she felt I might be joking at first. Then she laughed. "Are you going to tell me this is how we get a weekend away together?" Chapter 103.
Kyle Craig was finally back in Washington. Was this great, or what? He was all rested and ready to go, too. Everything was on a collision course, and he couldn't wait for the final crash to happen. Or rather, the crashes. What would the Vegas odds have been against him when he was put away in that Colorado hellhole? Well, he'd beaten all the odds, all the predictions. He'd been doing it his entire life. He had bought a used car in Maryland before he got to D.C. The Buick was a surprisingly quick little whip, too. Plus, it had the advantage of not sticking out in a crowd. D.C.'s car thieves wouldn't particularly covet it, which was worth something. For a couple of hours in the early morning, 4 to 6 to be exact, he drove around the capital playing the sightseer, the tourist, remembered being an agent in this town. He went down First Street, past the Supreme Court building, the House and Senate, the Capitol building, even giving a salute to the Statue of Freedom on its dome. glorious city. Still one of his favorites, though not quite up to the standards of Paris. At least, not in his opinion. He had always admired the French and their justifiable disdain for Americans, for everything about us. Finally, Kyle drove over to Pennsylvania Avenue and went right past the Hoover Building, FBI headquarters. Here was the scene of so many of his triumphs when he was an agent, then a director in charge, chasing down dastardly murderers, with an emphasis on pattern killers. Ironically, no one had a better closure record than him, not even Alex Cross. And here he was again, ready to do some damage, feeling the old venom coursing through his body, ready to rip up the town again, just like in the old days. He had a small Sony Vaio computer, and he could get on the internet right from his car. A lot of interesting things had happened in the tech world while he'd been wasting away in ADX Florence. He'd missed out on it, thanks to Cross and a few others from the Bureau who had helped betray him. Kyle booted up the Sony. Then he typed, "I'm in town," kind of emotional for me. "If you don't have a prior commitment, remember our meeting on Saturday night. I do believe we can be great together. X marks the spot." He didn't bother to add, "It's you versus me now." Kyle thought that should be obvious to DCAK. We'll have to see, though. We'll just have to see.
Chapter 104.
The worst is yet to come. Kyle remembered the catchphrase from a long time ago, from before he was captured by Alex Cross. He had just murdered a most disrespectful crime reporter from the Washington Post, and the arrogant fucker's wife as well. He had planned to outdo the great minds of his time: Gary Sinise, Jeffrey Schaefer, Casanova, whom he had worked with as a co-author, so to speak. Most of all, most important to him, Kyle planned to top himself, to grow, to evolve, to achieve greatness in his field, to follow his dream. Suddenly, he remembered something else, something very painful from the time of his arrest. Alex Cross had knocked out his 2 front teeth. That's how he had looked when he was finally captured. In photographs that appeared in newspapers and magazines all over the world, on every single TV broadcast. The mastermind. Toothless, like some kind of bloody fool, like a street person, a derelict. And that woman, she had mocked him publicly too, said to his face that he would never see the sun again, boasted and bragged about it in front of all kinds of witnesses. She had even written a turgid book that the equally uninspired Washington Post had hailed as a masterpiece on criminal justice. So this dreary red-brick colonial was where Judge Nina Wolfe lived in the city of Fairfax. The wages of sanctimony weren't worth so much, were they? Kyle began to walk toward the house, and as he did, he took out a small canister. He started to shake it furiously. He was furious, and he had every damn right to be. Judge Nina Wolfe had taken 4 years of his life. No doubt about it anymore. It was his time now. DCAK was yesterday's news. Starting right now. He was the man again. Just him. He aimed the canister and wrote his message.
Chapter 105. Monty Donnelly, a research analyst and a good friend out at Quantico, was the one who called me. Probably because Monty knew I was close to Judge Nina Wolfe. The two of us had worked closely at the time of Kyle Craig's trial. Then I had helped her with her book. Nina was the doting mother of 3 teenage girls. Her husband George was sweet-natured but also funny enough to do stand-up comedy. George was the perfect match for the sober-looking judge. And now,